Alright, little Drewy, we're going on a car trip. Did you pack your Game Boy? Alright, cool. So, what starter Pokemon are you going to choose?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the House of Mario, the award-winning Nintendo podcast, backed by 120 Power Star rating, and the doors to episode 110 are open. I'm your host, Drew Agnew, and joining me, as always, is my Dancing with the Stars friend, Bryce DeWitt. He's doing a little...
What season was I on?
A 5, the worst season. You're the first one to go.
Oh.
Your little tango did not impress the judges. So, how'd you feel about that?
Well, I'm not a dancer, so I suppose it's fine.
But you're a star. You are a star.
Oh, thanks, man.
You're a twinkle in my eye, that's for sure.
I'm a part of the 120.
Yeah.
Yay.
I mean, you're the 121st.
The big one?
Yeah, the big
Oh.
one. The big one.
Oh.
The big star. You're a big star, man.
Oh.
I don't know where this is going.
You're beautiful.
Yeah. So this week, Bryce, we are talking about the Game Boy family of handheld systems by Nintendo. Nintendo made them. Did you know that?
No, I thought they were made by Huawei.
So, was it the Game Boy has its 30th anniversary in North America?
It certainly does.
And it's not quite here. It came out the year after in Europe and Australia.
That's right.
But the Game Boy is something very close to my heart. All of them.
Yep.
All the models, especially the Game Boy Advance, which we will talk about as well, not just the originals.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we gotta make our way through them.
Mm-hmm. We do have to make our way through them.
Yeah.
So the Game Boy, it launched in Japan April 21st, 1989. North America, 1989 as well. And in September 28th, 2090 in Europe. And I actually don't know when it came out in Australia.
You just said 2090.
Did I? Yeah, it came out in 2090.
1990.
1990. I don't know why I said 2000. You know, it just came out. It just came out.
Yeah, it's alright. It's alright. The Game Boy's older than us, Drew.
It is.
It's crazy.
It's 5 years older than me.
Holy shit.
I know, like a lot of people saying, "Oh, I feel so old." Well, if you listen to this, I'm going to make you feel older. Sorry.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
And how much did it sell? It sold worldwide 118 million
Holy crap.
units. So that's really good.
Well done, Game Boy.
Well done, Game Boy. Clap, clap.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a weird system because the original Game Boy, it stuck around for years and years and years.
Yes, it did.
Nintendo didn't really update it much until obviously the Game Boy Pocket and the Game Boy Color. So it sort of went on for ages. So with the original Game Boy, Bryce, do you have much experience with it?
I actually do.
You do? Yeah?
Yeah, it's the first Game Boy I ever owned.
No, it was?
Yep.
Okay. So what was the sort of circumstance of you getting the Game Boy? And
well, the circumstance of me getting the Game Boy is I think I was like, oh, Jesus.
It was Jesus. Jesus gave you the Game Boy.
7 or 8. Or, I don't know. It was something along the lines of that. Maybe 7, maybe 8. And the Game Boy Pocket is the first handheld console I ever... the Game Boy, the original Game Boy, is the first handheld console that I'd ever owned.
Mm-hmm.
So I had it for about 4 months before it died. Unfortunately. Because obviously around this time, that was a very old console still.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, 1990, I was 7, so you would have been about 10 years old at that point.
Yeah.
But I certainly had my time with it and had fun, and it was great. And obviously, like, the Game Boy Color was already out by then, and I was way more interested in that. And it was sort of just a big thing. But just like the fact that I could play like games of some caliber, because a lot of things that I had played before I absolutely owned that Game Boy, were just like those cheap like Tetris things.
Yeah, see, that's exactly what I had too. My grandma had one.
Yeah, exactly.
And she like used to keep it in the living room, just like on this shelf, and I'd always go up there and just play that. And I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, And the reason I don't consider that a console is because it's just a one game wonder. So those are the only things I've really had an experience with. Actually, I think I had a Game and Watch at one point, but like a Game and Watch is like also a one trick wonder.
Yeah, it's the same thing pretty much.
Yeah. So at that point, I knew about the Game Boy. I wanted a Game Boy. I wanted a Game Boy Color at the time, but obviously, grandmother was just feeling kind. She went up, and they don't know what they're after.
Yeah, so she got the big fat one. Bit cheaper, probably.
It was secondhand.
Yeah.
So she picked it up, brought it up. I still played it anyway. Still loved it. I still loved it to bits, and it could still play most Game Boy games. It was thrown at it, regardless of whether unless it was like Crystal, which was color exclusive. Yeah. And then but So I had a big fat Game Boy, and unfortunately it died, so we just got rid of it. It always brings back a little bit, like little memories. Those things really stand the test of time. Big fat Game Boy. We've got most of them sitting right here, right now.
Yeah, so I've got them in front of me, and like my experience with this Game Boy here, this wasn't my first Game Boy. This was when I already had my SP and I was playing games on that. But we went to a garage sale, or I think it was a clearing sale. It was a farm clearing sale, and they just had this table and they had a Game Boy on there, and I said, "Mum, I want the Game Boy." And we got it for like real cheap, like $10 or something, and it came with like obviously the Game Boy and the copy of Tetris. Yeah, and I didn't play it a whole lot, but I played the game of Tetris on my SP a fair bit. Yeah, and because like obviously when you have the Game Boy Advance SP there, you're going to recharge that just in the wall, but this thing takes like 4 batteries.
4 batteries, exactly, yeah.
So in a like 2005 or whenever it was, I'm going to save the batteries for something else. Probably maybe a Wiimote or something. Yeah. Not quite yet a Wiimote. Yeah. But I just want to bring up sort of some of the games for the original Game Boy. So I've just got like the best selling list here. So the first one's Tetris. That's obvious. It got bundled with the original Game Boy. Yeah. And like I absolutely love the original version of Tetris. I know sort of the rules and everything have changed a fair bit since this version.
They absolutely have, yeah.
And this was like a really important game for the Game Boy as well, sort of getting it in hands of people that weren't gamers back then. Yeah. Like you hear stories of like a lot of businessmen just going around, got the Game Boy, playing it on the train or something like that, and they'll be playing Tetris, because I guess it's one of those games where you look at mobile now where people aren't gamers, but they got this simple little game they can play just on the way to work or something. That's what the Game Boy and Tetris was back then.
Yeah, absolutely was, yeah. I remembered something earlier. They have in a museum, they have like an old Game Boy that was used by somebody that was in the army. Yeah. And it was like burnt to a crisp, but it still ran and it still played Tetris.
They've got it in a... where'd they have it? They have it in a Nintendo New York store. I think they've got it displayed there. Yeah. And that's incredible. Like, because like this thing here, I've actually got it, so I'll show you, Bryce. Obviously, the audio listeners can't hear this, but the screen...
I was playing around with it earlier and noticed, yeah.
Yeah, the actual bit of plastic that goes over the screen, like, is not attached to it. The glue's, like, dried and just fallen off. Yep. So I've got to, like, reattach it, and, it does look pretty dirty and dated. Yeah. But...
the thing I love about this thing, though, is just like how archaic it does sort of like sound and feel.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, like the switches, they all sound like something that really belongs on old tech. But I like it. I really love it. Yeah. But the one that's in the New York store, that thing was like, it was burnt up after like an attack on the base or something, and like it's still half burned or whatever, but they've got it connected to like a permanent power source that still plays Tetris. That's crazy. Like, it's crazy how durable like the original Game Boy actually was for 1990, and just being hard shell plastic and surviving an attack like that, and then still being able to play Tetris afterwards. It looks mangled, but it works. That's crazy.
So, obviously, a game we've spent a lot of time with is Pokemon. So, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green are the second best-selling games. And I guess it's not really cheating, I guess, but, they're all put together. So, people might have had all 3 versions or both versions or whatever. Yeah. But that's managed to sell over 31 million copies all up.
Yeah. I mean, to this day, it's still, the most popular set of Pokemon games in existence. Yeah. Like a lot of people know about them. A lot of people played them. A lot of people go nuts over the Kanto region.
Yeah, the originals. Yeah,
So,
I think a lot of people are like, all right, that's enough for Kanto now. But yeah.
but everybody knows Pokemon for its classic.
Mm.
You know.
And like as far as like just the Game Boy family of systems goes for me, Pokemon was just like it would have been 80% of what I played on the thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it was just huge. I absolutely loved it.
Yep.
Like playing all of them. I started on Generation 3 on the Game Boy Advance, but I went back and played Gen 1, Gen 2 and all that, and I've got the original copies here now, and because like obviously these batteries don't work anymore. Even the batteries on my Game Boy Advance games don't work anymore, so I wouldn't expect it to work on the Game Boy versions. But absolutely love them.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about Pokemon as it goes on.
Yeah, for sure.
Then next up is another Pokemon game, Pokemon Gold and Silver. This is a huge game for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It is for me too, but it was a childhood game for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've played the original Pokemon as well, but I think like I was most gripped when Gold, Silver, Crystal came out.
Yeah, that little bit older too, maybe as well might have helped.
Yeah, it's possible. Like it's just something about like because I played the original game, I love the original game, and I love Pokemon in general. But then like when Gold, Silver, Crystal came out, it was just absolutely mind blowing to me when that came out. And you've got the Johto region, and then all of a sudden you're going back to the Kanto region. I'm like, whoa! Like that was just nuts to me that they fit basically the whole old game into the new game. Yeah.
Well, just going from Tetris. So Tetris, one of like the launch games for the system, and just going from that. So it's a very fun game, but there's not much to it. It's not like a huge open game like which blows your mind.
Yeah.
But then you go to like the Pokemon games where Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green were like really big, expansive. Like, oh wow, this is something huge, like a huge game. It'll take you maybe 20 hours or something to beat.
Yeah.
Then you go to Gold, Silver, Crystal, which is twice the size.
Yep.
Which would have just been mind blowing.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
then,
for sure. Yeah. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Super Mario Land. What do you think of this Mario game? This was a launch game as well.
Mario Land is such a quirky game. Like the thing is like it and its sequel are probably the weirdest Mario games they've ever made in house.
See, Mario Land, it's kind of like it's a worse version of the original Mario Bros. But Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins, I reckon that's a really good game.
Oh yeah,
it's really quirky. It's really weird, and they sort of I feel like some of these games, like the Mario and Zelda games on Game Boy, they just went, all right, let's just have fun with this. Let's make it real weird. You got like Link to a Past on SNES, but with the Game Boy, they sort of just threw stuff at it, see what happened.
Obey Wario, destroy Mario. That's what I remember of Super Mario Land 2. Is that advertisement? That was the first introduction of Wario.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
and then it spun off into the
Wario Land series.
Wario Land series, yeah.
Yeah. And then he become, staple Nintendo character throughout the years. And like
and he birthed Waluigi.
Jesus, let's not go there.
Really picture that, please. Really picture Wario
we've
birthing.
We already had fan fiction on this show before between the two. I don't need to know about him birthing him. Jesus.
He didn't birth Jesus.
See, the thing is a lot of people hold Mario Land 2 like that, like as that game. But I still think Mario Land 1 for me was still a pretty damn good game.
Like, yeah, I liked it.
It was very short, but like
very short.
Oh yeah,
finish it in half an hour.
You could finish it in half an hour. That's absolutely right. But like, it's
even
still
less, probably. Yeah.
It still had those weird things like floating around a friggin' submarine and doing a whole water level in a submarine.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Really, like it was a really weird game, but I loved it so much. But I think the thing I took away most from like the original Game Boy was that like I had like a whole handful of games. I could not, it was only about 3 or 4 technically, but like to me that was big. Like I had a Nintendo 64 already. And knowing how they worked, I was like, holy crap, like I've got a Game Boy now. I can just go and buy games and switch them out whenever I want and all that stuff. And I had this like handful of games that they sort of just picked up and gave them to me. I could not remember half of them now.
Yeah, okay.
Like that's the thing about the Game Boy is like there were some stellar titles on it, but the ones that sort of stood on the top really overshadowed like all these little other titles that were on the Game Boy. There was this one game where you played like as an android in a side-scrolling sort of No, it wasn't Mega Man before we start. But I can't remember exactly what it was called, but you like played as like a Terminator style type android, and you were like flying around shooting things down, enemies and stuff like that. And it was so hard. I think like the third level would kick my ass every time.
Okay, yeah.
But it was really good. Like just stuff like that. There was like really neat games on the Game Boy that were just overshadowed so hard by like the likes of Mario Land, Tetris, Pokemon, that type of thing. Even Link's Awakening later down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you play Link's Awakening natively on Game Boy, did you? Or Game Boy Color even, the DX version?
I played DX. Yeah. That was a version I specifically played.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I didn't play DX until like Virtual Console.
Yeah.
On the 3DS.
Yep.
One game I really want to bring up is Donkey Kong. The Donkey Kong on Game Boy. I didn't play this until the Virtual Console on 3DS, but it is really a fantastic version of Donkey Kong. So it's like the original Donkey Kong, but there's so many levels. There's like 100 levels.
Yeah.
And it's got like the map select, and I absolutely loved it. I was like, when the 3DS launched and there really wasn't much to play on it, I was just playing Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
It was
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah.
Did you ever play that on Virtual Console or the original Game Boy? Or?
Unfortunately, I didn't. But I knew of its existence, but I never actually got my hands on it. So it was sort of like the problem with the Game Boy, at least where we are, is that there were so many oddities to it, right? Like you'd pick up the general stuff, like your obvious stuff like Pokemon or Mario Land or Tetris and all that stuff, but then thinking about like titles like Donkey Kong, as great as it was not like high on my priority list.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like
but it's just it caught me by surprise because it's just way better than you think it would be.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
think back Donkey Kong on the Game Boy, like, oh yeah, but it's really fun. I recommend anyone who hasn't played it go and pick it up on 3DS because it's really good.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And actually, because I was just looking around my Game Boys, I've actually got a physical copy. I remember I bought one when I bought all of this.
Nice.
But I don't know where it is.
Oh.
Must be in the cupboard still.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I've got Pokemon Silver in my Game Boy Pocket here.
Yep.
But I didn't actually... Yeah, don't know where it is.
Speaking of the Pocket, let's talk about that since that's sort of the next real revision.
So the Game Boy Pocket, I remember my friend Zach had the Pocket.
Yep.
So when he got his Game Boy Advance SP, he basically went straight from the Pocket to the SP.
Yep.
Which would have been pretty mind-blowing, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really nice... It's still a nice-looking system. Yep. I've got the silver one here, and it's just a sort of... It's a lot smaller, nice to hold. It's got a nice screen.
It's a really good revision.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it become a staple for the Game Boy Color following it.
Let's see if it's got any battery. I want to see if it can... No. There we go.
Hey.
Took longer than I remembered it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh. Listen to that. I love that.
Yeah, so do I.
I love those.
The only problem is this copy of Silver has no battery.
Of course.
Yeah. But even if it did have battery, I'd play it on 3DS anyway because of like all the Pokemon Bank stuff integrated into it now.
Yeah.
Something you can like trade up.
I don't know. I'd really love to go back to doing that one day and doing like a run of Pokemon or something. That would be so good for
actually like hold on the old hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be really nice. Yeah.
I would love to do that again.
Yeah, so would I.
If I'm honest with you.
I mean, yeah. Because at least with the Game Boy Advance games, since the batteries don't work in them anymore, but it doesn't affect saving.
Yeah.
It only affects like the
clock
time.
events.
Clock events, yeah. So berries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I can still play those. But yeah, all of these other ones are just dead. I assume you can replace them. You can replace the batteries, can't you? In the GBA, you definitely can. I would assume it would be the same for the color as well. Just putting in a refurbished battery sort of deal. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm looking back at these games. I've got like a copy of Pokemon Blue. I remember a friend from primary school gave this.
Fucking Christ! Look at the back of that red version. What the fuck?
So it's on the back. It says cash converters $89. Since I've got a couple of Game Boys, I did not pay $89 for it.
$89.
Yeah, $89. Oh. That's crazy.
Fuck.
I did not pay $89. I wouldn't have bought it for $89.
Thank God.
Nah.
They were trying to sell that individually for $89.
Yeah, well, apparently.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so like these I guess the stories for the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Pocket I've got. This was actually at AvCon a year or two ago.
Yep.
There was a cash converter store there, and they had like all this retro stuff, and I was like, oh, it's real cool. And I was looking at the Game Boy Pocket and the Color, and I'm like, oh, I want to get one because I collect like the handheld Nintendo systems.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I picked up some of them and some games. I got Pokemon Silver, Pokemon Red, and Donkey Kong on there.
Nice.
So I don't really have that many Game Boy games. It's kind of a shame that I can't really play them, especially the Pokemon ones. Obviously Tetris I can, but I can't go back and play Pokemon Red and all that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but yeah, this was like the absolute definition of like how to make the Game Boy just that much better. Like, excusing the Pocket, of course, for the Color for a minute, but Color has like its own draws to it that, you know, make it a choice over the Pocket. But like, it's just when you're holding them in comparison, they're actually not too much different in weight.
Yeah, no,
to be really
it's
surprised.
a little, it's got a lot of weight in like a small little.
Yeah, but it's so much smaller.
Yeah,
like it's crazy. It's crazy amount of smaller.
It's got a way better screen too.
It does. It absolutely does. And like it just feels great in the hands, like as it is. Whereas like when you're a kid and you had like the original Game Boy was like, holy shit, this is a brick. You know, with tiny hands. That's how it was. Now it fits my hands like really stupid comfortably and feels nice. But like, yeah, this is definitely like where, you know, they're like, all right, Game Boy's selling like hotcakes. Let's put out a new one. Let's make it more small, better form factor. Put it in your pocket. It won't pop out. Sort of deal. And God, it still looks as beautiful as when it come out.
I find it crazy just how small these the screens are.
Yeah.
Like if you're actually like, oh, I'll tell you what, I want to go and play through whatever game, Pokemon for example, and you pick it up, like the screen is just so small. It's like it's probably not even half your palm on your hand.
That's
like,
exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the moment, I've got the Game Boy Color. I've got the green one.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful green one. I have so many memories of that green in my childhood.
And you had this. Did you have a Game Boy?
I did not have a Game Boy Color.
No,
but I knew people that did, and every single one of them had that lime green.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? It seems to be a very popular color.
I love that green.
Yeah. Because actually, look at the back of this. I've still got the price tag. $99 they had for this Game Boy Color.
Yep.
And they had $89 for Pokemon Red.
Yeah.
With no box or anything.
No.
And what conditions is the sticker in? It's actually pretty good. But yeah, like the cart's actually in a pretty good condition considering.
Has the color got batteries in it?
It should do. Let's turn it on. Whoops. Let's put it on the mic. Oh. Yes, please.
Oh, I love that console.
Yeah. I just love the ding.
Yeah.
That must have been introduced with the Game Boy Color because like the Game Boy Pocket did like the Nintendo logo coming from the top and it took a lot longer.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess they can make it a bit quicker, just because of the better hardware in there, a little bit more RAM or something.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I borrowed a Game Boy Color back in the day when a friend was sort of done with it and whatever, and that's how I played Pokemon Crystal, which turned out to be like my favorite Pokemon game. Pretty
what
much.
What friend
ever.
was it? By
I'm pretty sure it was Darcy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So he was done with it. He's like, yeah, you can borrow it, and then that's how I played Crystal. I played Crystal on his Game Boy Color, and obviously eventually I had to give it back and whatever. But throughout the years, like I still had what was it? I think I ended up getting another old Game Boy.
What, the original one again?
I'm trying to remember because there was one point where actually no, I might have just had the Advance. I might have just at the time had the Advance and was using it to connect to a Game Boy Color to trade.
Yeah,
I could be mistaken, but yeah, when I went to Alice Springs, like I played Crystal all over again on the trip, and like we had three of us, we all had Game Boys, and we're all like, right, we'll start off, we all each get a different starter, we each get a Pidgey, and then whatever we get from there is whatever we get from there. And
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
like sort of like setting your own challenge, like a lot of people do now.
Yeah,
yeah.
We made it a challenge to see how long it would take us to get to the end, and yeah, it was good. Yeah, a whole lot of fun.
I really like just thinking back on these and having these in front of me, I just like these. Just the hardware itself. I just love just the look of them and the feel of them, the vibe of them.
Yeah.
Like the big cartridges, what snap in.
Mhm.
It's just like, we've got like real sleek things now. Like, you got the Switch, you got like the PlayStation Vita, you got iPads, whatever. But they just don't have like the same tactile feeling a Game Boy has.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Having that, like, it's got a really nice D-pad. Like, I wish the Switch had the same D-pad.
Yeah.
And like the buttons, everything. And the sounds that come from them. Like some of the remixes from Game Boy games, or even like the DJs that like plug their sound stuff into like the original Game Boy to use the sound chip. I love it so much. Just everything about the Game Boy, the aesthetic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I'm dying for them to do a Game Boy classic.
Yeah, they won't.
Love that.
They won't. They unfortunately. I think like as neat as they are, I think like it's sort of like past its time, where it's sort of like connecting it to a TV and having a couple controllers or something like that with the SNES and Mini NES and all that is like cool.
Yeah.
You sort of have a fun time. But the problem with like pocket variants of consoles is just like, well, they have to consider whether they put in battery slots or rechargeable ones or whatever, and then they have to sort of load them with games. And if you want the full Game Boy experience, then you've also got to make sure you re-add in like a way to a trade and stuff like that in Pokemon and all that. I think it's just probably a bit too much work, because they are a lot of tech in one tiny little thing in comparison to like the NES and Mini NES. That was basically like, here's a console, it has a video out, and it has a couple of controller ports done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wish they'd do it.
Oh, yeah, look, I do too, because like just looking at them again, it's just like, God, like that's my childhood right there.
Yeah.
Like I love my N64, and N64 was my primary, but I know that like with the Game Boy, I could just go anywhere I wanted. I could, at the time I was living out of town when I got my first Game Boy, and I'd go sit in a giant fucking tree and play it.
Yeah. See, I've got memories like that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was just something you did with Game Boy. You just went anywhere you wanted, and it was such like a marvel just to play Pokemon or something. Just out of the house, even go and hide somewhere, play Pokemon.
So I've got some memories from some people on Twitter. So Andrew Taylor, he says, growing up, my family had 2 of the original Game Boys for both my older brothers, and I remember when one of my brothers handed me his Game Boy and I played Metroid 2. Game was crazy when the reveal happened at the end of the game. So Metroid 2, that was a game that I didn't I didn't play at all until 3DS Virtual Console, but even then I didn't play it, and obviously it got remade.
Yeah.
And did you play much of the 3DS remake?
I actually didn't. No.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to. I just haven't really gotten around to it, I guess. I would have loved to have played it in its original form, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I guess the Metroid series, that wasn't a series I got into until Prime on DS. So that was a long way after the Game Boy.
I mean, I played Prime on the GameCube, and I loved Prime on the GameCube before I had my DS, but Prime Hunters was like the first Metroid game I ever really finished.
Yeah.
And it was, the one I absolutely loved, and still continue to harp on about to this day. So, but Metroid has always sort of been like in a weird place in terms of like mobile presence on handheld systems. Like it's either, Metroid 2 or Metroid Prime Hunters. I think that's it. Maybe Metroid Pinball. Oh, no, Metroid Federation Force. And then you got Metroid Pinball, I guess.
Yeah, Metroid Pinball, that's cool.
Most of it's been
DS,
on the DS, Yeah. Zero Mission.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I almost forgot about Zero Mission. And that's considered one of the best ones, Like, but that was on the Game Boy Advance, of course. But yeah, I'll talk about that later. But like early on in the Game Boy's life, it obviously didn't have much presence. Metroid kind of went from like more console-ish presence, and then it sort of like tried to start off on the Game Boy with 2, but it definitely wasn't as good as like Super Metroid sort of thing. So I can't remember when Super Metroid released.
Doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to stress myself thinking about it, but I think just like playing something like Metroid on a home console was like probably a bit more appealing.
Yeah,
maybe. And
especially like I guess the problem with Metroid 2 as well, like there's them trying to fit it onto the Game Boy and get the sprite big enough, but it was hard to see like around you because of there wasn't that much displayed on the screen as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So it's a game I want to go back and have a dabble with, but I wouldn't want to go back and replay the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Especially now it's been remade, and obviously there's a fan remake if it got pulled.
Yeah, AM2R.
Yeah, a little bit before. So thank you very much, Andrew Taylor, for that memory. Next up, we've got Dylan Blight. He says, he asks, do you have a Game Boy or... No, sorry. I'll start again. Did you have a printer... or a Game Boy printer? If not, you missed out because I print my certificate for getting all the Pokemon in Pokemon Silver, and that makes me a real gamer.
You know what the funny thing is I did play around with a Game Boy printer.
I actually haven't.
Those things were fucking weird.
Yeah,
they were so strange. But like, who thinks of that? Who thought of that at Nintendo headquarters? Let's make a printer for the Game Boy.
Well, that's the thing with the Game Boy. They were very experimental. They're just like... They very much treated it as they would like as a toy maker.
Yeah.
Because that was like the Game Boy... They treated it more like a toy than like, oh, this is a high-tech system. Because obviously the Game Boy wasn't a high-tech system. There were other handhelds out at the time that were colour and more powerful. Like, look at the Sega stuff at the time.
Yeah.
Like, it just trounced it, but it took more batteries, had crap battery life, didn't have the games, so no one cared.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Yeah. But I did not have a printer. I know Luke in the Discord, he picked up one a couple of years ago, and he was, like, showing all his prints and that from it, and it's just, like, some of the things they included in the games was just real weird. Like, hey, there's a bit of a wallpaper you can print if you beat this level or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Remember some, like, Mario, like, faces you can print out, and obviously the Pokemon one would have been real cool back in the day.
Yeah.
I know if I like played the Pokedex and I was a kid and I could print it out, I'd be like, yes, I want to do that. Where do I get this printer?
Yeah. When I used it, we only used it pretty briefly. A friend of ours had it, Thomas.
Okay, he had it, did he?
He had it. He had a Game Boy printer.
He had all the stuff back then, didn't
he? Yeah.
Legend.
Yeah. He was very into niche collecting. So when I mucked around with it, it was just sort of like we used the base software to sort of print some of the stuff off of there and all that. And I just remember it being like such a weird experience looking at the base software. Like the base software that you got with the Game Boy printer, it was like you could print like I think it was like small pictures of like Mario and Luigi and all that stuff, and then you had like this weird title screen that had like a guy like making faces, and it was really strange, and like the Game Boy printer was just such a weird thing.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Just thinking back to it.
So, in other words, no, we're not real gamers. We did not print our certificates. Right. Did you ever complete the Pokedex on your original Game Boy games?
Nah.
Didn't? Wasn't into that?
No, I was more into the aspect of just trying to make my Pokemon stronger, and that was my thing.
You had your Dragonite, your Tyranitar, you're set, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Dane Peavy, he says, I remember trying to play Super Mario Land 2 on the original Game Boy at night on a family car trip, using the strobing street lights or any available lights to see the screen. Didn't have this light adapter or magnifying screen with the built-in lights until later in life. So that's the thing, like... It's not so bad with the original Game Boys, but I know like the Game Boy Advance, just trying to see that screen is really hard, especially like compared to even like these ones we've got in front of us.
Oh yeah.
A
lot more detail on the screen, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
The Game Boy was very simple on the detail, so it was better on the eyes and a lot easier to manage, if you know what I'm saying. But do you remember all those accessories that provided light? The worm lights, the pretty much covers that had like the full magnifying glasses.
Yeah, there's some crazy looking contraptions out there.
There was, just to get the Game Boy to, be viable in any situation.
Just see it.
That's exactly right. And I mean, it was a beautiful thing. Like a lot of companies made them and stuff like that. And I remember I had something for my Game Boy Advance that was that. It was like clipped onto it, and it was a magnifier. You lifted it up a bit, and it sort of gained a bit of distance on the screen. You could magnify it, see it a lot better, and all that stuff. And it was sort of a weird time, really, wasn't it? But no, for sure, it was a real market for just accessories for every single one of these consoles.
Yeah.
And whether it be the Pocket, the Game Boy Color, every like all three of them in that line, they all had like a huge accessories market.
Like link cables. That was a
Link cables was a big thing too.
I had the one friend with a link cable, so we just had to like use that all the time, and they're probably like $30. I don't know how much they were. They're probably more. I don't know how expensive they were, but we could have just easily bought one. But no, we had to use Adams all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He had one.
Yeah.
And it was hard enough to find them in store, like as it was. So,
Yeah.
Could never remember how much it was exactly worth.
No. I never even thought about buying one because I guess when you're a kid, you're like, I can use his cable and I can use that money to buy a game.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead,
Yeah.
Whereas now we'll be like, yeah, we've got the link cables, we've got the docks, we've got the lights, we've got it all, mate. We got it.
But that was the thing as a kid as well. Like when you were playing with the Game Boy, it was like you could just do that. You sort of could just get amongst your friends and just be like, "Can I borrow this? Can you borrow? You can borrow that. Like, can I borrow your link cable for the weekend so me and such can do some trading?" Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
like, it was literally like, oh, we're gonna restart our game and we want to get all the starters and we've got like this big elaborate plan set up how to set up our games to get started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was definitely a lot of thought processing in it.
Yeah. If we put that much work into our schoolwork, we might have actually got somewhere in life.
I did really well in school, thank you very much. But yeah, it was just like a good way to sort of keep conversation going, like from like when we're at home, like what did we do? It's like, oh well, we played a shit ton of Pokemon and we sort of explained what we were doing with our teams and all that stuff, and what we want to trade and all that stuff. The one thing we never really got around was shiny hunting.
Well,
it was a lot harder back.
It was way harder. It was ridiculous.
I think a lot of us, especially in the age that I was like really playing Pokemon, which is Gold, Silver, Crystal. Red Gyarados was like this big myth. Like it was there and you could catch it, yes, but it was like that's the only one in the game that does that. Like never, because especially at the time we didn't really have the internet. It's like never would I guessed that every Pokemon had the opportunity to be like a shiny Gyarados was. Because I never come across them in my like several playthroughs. I'd never come across a shiny Pokemon.
Also, it's a 1 in 8,000 and something chance of it being shiny, and that was like nothing.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah,
and
it's
like
crazy.
Like in X and Y now, it's 1 in 4,000 and something chance. But yeah, it was crazy until Gen 6. Yeah. So Kevy Coops on Twitter, he also has a memory. He goes, "Oh, memories, mainly Pokemon memories. 3 brothers in an epic feud. One with yellow, one with blue, and I had red. Oh, the battles we had, especially through Pokemon Stadium." And I guess Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 on Nintendo 64 really played into the Game Boy sort of, fun.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, because you could put your game cartridge in, you could use your Pokemon from the game on Pokemon Stadium, and it was like a big marvel. And it's like
and you could play your Game Boy game on the 64 as well. Yeah, and that was sort of the only way you could play your Game Boy Pokemon games on 64, because you had like the Super Game Boy and everything on Super Nintendo and all of that. But 64 didn't have any of that except for through Pokemon Stadium and the 64. Yeah.
God, remember the Super Game Boy? Holy shit. I wish I had that.
Oh my god, I would have died.
Yeah,
because it's kind of like a cheat, really. You don't have to buy a Game Boy. You just got that.
Yeah, you just buy the Super Game Boy, play the Game Boy games on your TV.
Because the Super Game Boy is just Game Boy hardware in a cartridge.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, man, it's just nuts.
I love the Super Game Boy. I mean, they even redid it for the GameCube, but for the GBA.
Yeah,
And I mean, you have my old GameCube now. Somehow
Yeah.
wound up back in your hands. It's got the Game Boy player on that.
Yeah, I know, and it's devastating because I don't have the disc.
No, yeah.
And the discs are the most rare things.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to get the actual hardware, but the software to make it run.
It's really hard to find.
I would have killed for that disc. I just want to play natively, legally, my own version of Pokemon Ruby Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, but...
I'm sorry, man. I couldn't find it. I'm sorry, man. I couldn't find it.
You got to look after your stuff, man.
Oh, for God's sake, that's the thing. It's like one of those things where we were moving around a lot. And,
Yeah.
You know, I moved 3 times in the time that I had that Game Boy player.
Yeah.
And it just disappeared on me.
Mm.
It's unfortunate. How much are they worth nowadays, the discs?
I haven't really looked.
Haven't really looked?
Nah, because
What are you complaining about? They could be $50.
they could be.
$50 ain't bad.
Nah, it's not. Not bad at all.
Yeah. I don't know. You have to look into it.
Also got to get a power version.
I suppose, but...
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Make a pirated copy. Get in.
What? A pirated copy on a GameCube disc. Get a blank GameCube disc to rip it onto.
The thing is like with the GameCube discs, they weren't the only. What was it? Oh my god! There was these Pokemon discs. Shit. There was these Pokemon discs that were branded after like Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur, and they were like the small GameCube size discs, but you put them in your PC and you get things off of them. I can't remember what they were from.
Oh my god! Yeah, it's crazy. Those discs actually worked in a PC.
Yeah,
because like back in the day, you didn't actually have to like put it on to make it spin. It just sort of slapped in, didn't it? The CDs.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was like little molds and CD players in the CD drives of PCs where like the 8-inch discs would just fit.
You've taken me down a rabbit hole now, Bryce. Do you remember this sort of paint software, but it's Pokemon? And they had a red version and a blue version. And it was only, you could do your text. It was very much like paint. You could do your text, you could do your pictures, you could like print stickers and stuff, but there's a red and a blue version where only had certain Pokemon on each version. And I had blue version on my mum's computer, and I remember saying, "Mum, I want to print these stickers." And I'm thinking back on it, I'm like, how do you get sticker paper? I don't know what sticker paper is. Seems pretty complicated printing your own stickers, but you could do that in this software. You could there's all these different modes, and there was this party mode where you could like make your own party hats and your party things to put up, and I had like a birthday at this you'll know it, but it's this what do they call it, like this road safety place where where your kids and you like ride your bikes on these little tiny fake roads to learn common sense on the road when you're riding your bike. And we used to have birthday parties there, and through that software, my mum actually made like a Pokemon themed like birthday, like on the table. Like you got the cake, and you got like happy birthday. It's got Charmander, Squirtle, Bulbasaur there. It was really awesome. I used to go in there and just muck around and just like make pictures, like put Bulbasaur here, Scyther there. Yay, this is fun. And that's something I really remember. I had that before I even had a Pokemon game.
Yeah. But like that's what Pokemon's influence did all the way from the Game Boy, is it just created like all this shit. You know, it really like expanded, and like we have this beautiful trio set of consoles here to thank for that. You know, really ramping up the Pokemon hype and creating a lot of memories for us, and going from there.
So let's move into Game Boy Advance, Bryce. So we've gone Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Color. Mm-hmm. And now we're on to the advanced series of the Game Boy line.
That's right.
So when these came out, they were actually like really quite powerful hardware. The idea of like a SNES powered console in your hand was actually like really like mind blowing. So you had the original version, Bryce. So I'll let you say your memory first of getting your original Game Boy Advance and all that. First.
Well, the Game Boy Advance was me getting my dream come true. Because, like I said, I wanted a Game Boy Color when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the epitome of what I wanted. I'd always played other people's Game Boy Colors, and I'd always be so jealous, and I'd always want to play them all the time. But the Game Boy Advance was like, that was my big, holy shit, I finally got a Game Boy moment. And you know what the funny thing is most of the games that I played on Game Boy Advance, because like I wasn't from like a, you know, super well endowed family or nothing like that. Just didn't have a lot of money to throw around and stuff like that. So a lot of the games I would play would be borrowed. But the biggest thing that I'd ever got for my Game Boy that I bought for myself was Emerald.
Pokemon Emerald.
It was.
What a fucking delicious game.
A beautiful game. But like the fact that I could still play all my old Game Boy games on it and everything was just absolutely like bonkers. Like you guys all went to SPs. I was the only one that had a Game Boy Advance. Sam Telfer had one as well.
Okay.
But like it was absolutely mind blowing. You know,
because you got your Game Boy a fair bit before me, at least in kid years anyway.
Well, yeah, because the SP wasn't even out.
Yeah.
I got it when it was like brand new, and I had it for like 4 or 5 months before SP came out. And by God, it was just such a lovely little machine.
Can you remember what year you got yours? Because the Game Boy Advance, I'm just going to read it out here. So in Japan, it came out March 2001, then June 2001 in North America, and in Europe, yeah, also in June, but a few weeks later, and also in 2001. Do you remember? Did you get it in it wouldn't have been 2001 for you, would it? Would have been a bit earlier.
Class.
Mr. Fuser. So that was 2003, because I was in the class next to you.
Yeah.
So you got it in 2003. So you only got it a little bit before me, because I got this Game Boy Advance SP Christmas 2003.
Yeah, that's what I mean. About 6 months.
Yeah,
that's what I said.
And that feels like a long time.
Yeah, it
does.
does.
As a kid, that feels like a millennium.
Yeah, it does. It feels like crazy long. But it was so amazing at the time playing that thing. Shit, I'd already played them before. Sorry, you have to get that one out. I'd already played one before, and that was Sam Telfer's, and we play Pokemon and stuff like that. When the new Pokemon came out, we were playing that, and that was Ruby Sapphire. And we were, I remember like Sam and I were at his house, and we had a Wormlight on this Game Boy, and we were in the hot springs town in Ruby Sapphire. Remind me.
Oh,
I think it was.
I'm blanking. I haven't played it in a long time.
Yeah, no, I can't remember exactly, but I remember we were there, and he had a marsh top, and we evolved it there into a Swampert. That was the first time I'd ever seen Swampert.
I remember that as well.
Yeah,
I think I was there. Was that the swimming lake?
Possible. No.
Because I remember at the swimming lake, and we're all hunting Latios and Latias.
Yep.
And like Sam was having a real trouble catching the damn thing.
Yeah. No, I was staying at his place, and we were under the blanket with a Wormlight on the screen, and we could hardly see it, and we were there, we evolved the marsh top into Swampert, and it was the first time we had seen the evolutions, because like all the information coming around the game, we were pretty like neglected to it. We didn't look up anything, we just kind of went on as it was, and it was it was really good. Sort of like those memories, just like of experiencing all these new things, and the Game Boy Advance was like this new tech with all this new detail, and like it was crazy just to see like all these cool Pokemon come up as they were, and yeah, you know.
Did you play much else on the Game Boy Advance? Because I know like you mainly just played Pokemon like me, but did you play much else?
Game Boy Advance was my first exposure to Mario World. Because I never got to play it on the SNES.
Likewise, yeah, it was mine as well.
Yeah.
Did you borrow mine, or did you have your own copy? I can't remember now.
I borrowed someone's.
Because Mario World for me, I went into our now long gone local game store.
Yep.
And I picked up that for like $80, which when you're a kid, like holy shit, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, I've got this Nintendo thing, I should probably play Mario on it, because Mario is very Nintendo.
Yeah.
I was like a tiny little kid back then, and yeah, I absolutely loved it. That's how I fell in love with Mario World. Yeah.
It was it was a no-brainer for me to play it, and I absolutely love playing Mario World. But you know, I also had experiences like Minish Cap and stuff like that as well. And like I said, a lot of my Game Boy life was me borrowing games from people and playing them because I wasn't a very well off kid in terms of like money and stuff like that. It was really hard to sort of get a hold of games. When I did get a hold of them, I made sure they were games that I was gonna fucking play.
Yeah.
So but like all these games that I did borrow and play and experience, like it was all really good. I still remember memories of huddled around at Adams playing Super Circuit through link cable and stuff like that. And like my I never got an SP. My GBA, my original GBA, stuck with me throughout the whole thing. I loved it. I loved every moment of it. And like, you guys are sitting there with your backlit screens, you fancy bastards, and I'm just like, I love my GBA. I love the form factor of that console. I love the width of it, and like how it's got a decent spread apart on the hands and all that stuff.
Yeah, but the form factor, that's probably one of the best form factors on just actually playing it, probably of any of the Game Boys.
It does.
Being able to play it, like the bumper buttons are really nice and big.
Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like the screen itself. It's just hard to see in like a lot of situations.
It is.
You need to have like a pretty well lit conditions for it.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. Yeah. What it comes down for me is like, do I play the SP where I don't feel as comfortable holding it and have the backlight, or do I play the GPA, feel more comfortable, don't have a backlight, the screen's kind of bad? And it's like, you think the obvious thing would be like, get an SP, because kind of just makes sense too, right?
Oh, well, it's an extra $150 or $200, which you would not have had as a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
And your mum's like, you've already got a Game Boy Advance, for fuck's sake, I just bought it for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, but I mean, I still wasn't too phased. You know, like,
that's good. Yeah.
Without the backlight and everything, I was really happy with it. It was like the first game, but I'd been pining for one, like a brand new one, like the latest model for years. I wanted it really bad, and I finally had one in my hands, and I love that thing to death. I haven't got it anymore, which sucks, but you know, I know that the time that I had spent with my GBA,
so what happened to your Game Boy?
Thomas has it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gave it to him, sold it to him?
Sold it to him.
How much you get?
$80,
Oh, yeah.
I think.
So
but it was well worn at that point, and I was no longer playing Pokemon or anything, and yeah. I mean,
probably use that money to upgrade to a DS.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
And you could play your Game Boy Advance game on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was in the end. Yeah. Because I still had my Emerald version for a while before I got rid of it. I can't remember what I did with my Emerald version. I'm not sure.
Probably burnt it.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Yeah. I think like I'm sad you don't have one sitting here, Drew. You need to get one.
Oh no, I do need to get one. I'm always looking for a Game Boy Advance. I really want to get one of those modded ones. People have modded them now with backlit screens, with like real cool colors and designs, and in some cases even a rechargeable battery.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I want one of them, but they're really expensive. I had a look, they're like $300. Yeah. Because like you're paying for someone's labor to like really redo this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
kit.
From inside out.
So
yeah.
that really, but they look really cool, and I'll definitely play games on it if I had a rechargeable battery and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I was also talking to this guy. Every now and again, it comes up on my Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, oh, have a look at it. But there's always a problem with it.
Yeah.
And they're always asking like for $150 or something. It's like, no.
No way.
So yeah, I definitely do want to get one.
Yeah, for sure.
Just the right price and the right color and the right condition and all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the Game Boy's pinnacle.
Yeah. So the Game Boy Advance SP. So this was my introduction to Nintendo, pretty much. I still remember talking to my friends in year 3 at primary school, and they brought an advertisement over to me, and they said, "Oh, you're going to get the new Pokemon game, Drew?" And I was a huge Pokemon fan. I loved
the anime.
Loved the anime. Loved, like, you know, I had all these had that software on the computer I was talking about, and I loved Pokemon. I remember year 3 we're going through like a Digimon phase, so Pokemon wasn't super prominent right at that time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they brought the advertisement to me, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. I didn't know there were Pokemon games.
Yeah.
I thought it was the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I looked into it, and I would have asked Mum, can I get it for Christmas? And I was really looking forward to it. Hopefully get it for Christmas 2003. Really excited. And I get my present, and it's this big box. I'm like, oh, that's not a Game Boy box. It was a shoebox. I'm like, open it up. It was just a shoebox. Open it up, and it's got this newspaper in there. Take out the newspaper, and there's a Game Boy box. Oh my god! Then this other box, which and what she actually did, she put like a bottle of beans in alongside of the Game Boy. So when I shook it, it sounded like Lego or something. Because I thought it was Lego, but it was my Game Boy.
Well done, Mum.
Yeah, and in another box, she did the same thing, but it was Pokemon Sapphire. So really excited. Unbox it. Plug it into charge. I'm literally just like looking at this Game Boy, waiting for that friggin' orange light just to go boom, like turn off. I'm like, oh, it's charged. It's ready to go. And yeah, chucking Sapphire. What did I do? Like, name my character. Picked Mudkip in Pokemon Sapphire, and we went to lunch at my auntie's place for Christmas tea. Or lunch, and I just played it all day.
Yeah,
absolutely loved it. And I went through the whole game. I'm pretty sure I just used that Swampert the whole game. Play it like a real noob, just no idea what you're doing, just going through it. And yeah, so that's how I fell in love with Pokemon and the Game Boy Advance. And the Game Boy Advance SP is just like, I haven't held it in a long time. I've taken it back out the box to sort of have a look at it for this podcast.
Yep.
But holding it again, it like, looking at it as a holy crap, this thing is small compared to how I used to play it. Like, it's not even. It's as long as my pinky finger.
Yeah,
like it's tiny.
But in saying that, it is the best console revision I reckon that Nintendo has made, without any question.
Because like, regardless of what you said, like you prefer the form factor.
Yeah.
Rechargeable battery and a backlit screen just makes the thing that much more usable,
and a collapsible screen to protect itself
for like kids like myself who would have used it.
Yeah, nothing really jutting out that can, like, if you hit it against the ground or something, it'll snap because it's like displaced off the console. It's all just one square.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it is such a good revision. And like, when we were talking about the Switch Lite the other day, obviously I'm just sort of like, they removed so much from the Switch Lite, but they didn't give anything back. Like, with this, they removed the headphone jack, and that's annoying. But what you get for a removal of a headphone jack is an amazing amount of shit in one console. So if you can deal without the headphone jack, there is a lot to love in that console.
It's still like a real nice looking system too. Like,
it is.
Like, you got the Nintendo logo here, which is like nice and silver and shiny. And once you open it up, you got Game Boy Advance here, and I just absolutely love this thing.
Yeah,
and it's gotten me also, like, I had a look into like the models of the Game Boy Advance SP. There's actually, so this is something because Jordan, he had the silver version, and his screen always looked like, if I had like picked up his Game Boy to do something or play it or something, I'm like, God, your screen looks awesome. The screen on his Game Boy looked way better than mine.
Yeah,
and I had no idea why. And I remember just mucking around with the button, because with the Game Boy Advance SP, there's a button at the top where you can turn the light on or off.
Yeah.
But with his, what it did is it didn't just go on off. It went
a couple modes.
Yeah, there's a couple of modes. Then it went off. I'm like, that's weird. And not until years later, I'm like, found out there's two models of the Game Boy Advance SP. So mine is, what are we looking at here? Let me just look at the bottom here. It's a AGS 001. Whereas his must have been the AGS 101. So the 101 just had a better screen. Instead of what mine would do is chuck the light from the sides onto the screen to light up the screen.
Yep.
Whereas his was an actual backlit screen, so similar to screens you see on devices now.
Yeah, that's it.
Which is really cool. So I'm actually on the hunt for like a legitimate 101 version.
Yeah. So
it's kind of hard because I think I want a blue one.
Yeah.
Because originally I wanted a blue Game Boy Advance SP when I was a kid, but I never actually. I think at last minute, I want a black one. So I got a black one.
That might have been your bane. That might have been your bane from the screen.
No, but the thing is, I think the blue is not. I think it's mainly the silver, which is the 101 version.
Okay. All right. Yep.
I think.
It's alright, you could have just been one of them edgy boys and got a quick silver one.
Yeah. So there's a few. There was the All Blacks rugby team in New Zealand.
Yep.
They had their own version. I remember that was like advertised like pretty soon after I got this. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. But thinking back, there's like, you've got to be a pretty specific
fan for that type of
like
thing.
yeah, big rugby fan.
Yeah.
What's your Game Boy Advance SP? It might be worth a bit now. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say all those special editions were, but all those special editions like the Quicksilver one and all that, all it was just basically a shitty sticker.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
it wasn't
bit of a
anything
decal.
special.
Yeah, but like the red Game Boy Advance and the blue one, I really want one because they look really nice.
Mm-hmm.
It would be hard. Like mine's pretty scratched up from just years
General
of
use. Yeah.
So a lot of them will be like that. But if you could get like pretty much like a really well looked after one, it'd be really nice to have. I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess so Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire Emerald were huge things for me back in the day.
They dominated the console.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah, and Pokemon Fire Red Leaf Green, which were remakes of Red and Blue, or Red and Green, that was some of my favourites as well.
Yeah.
Gen 3, just I want to go back and play it right now. Now I'm holding my Game Boy because there's a couple of years ago, I looked at my save, and my save's probably from like 2014 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was working at the can depot, and I knocked off, and I just felt like playing Pokemon. And so what I did is I went back to the beach house, and I was just playing Pokemon there. I played it for like 10 hours straight on my Game Boy Advance SP. Like not that many years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago,
Yeah.
whatever it was. Yeah, and absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I want to do that again. And
Yeah.
I'm like halfway through the game because I literally sat down 10 hours straight, played it, and just never picked up my Game Boy
Yeah.
since to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was saying earlier. I'd love to play like a old version. I've still got an old copy of Gold somewhere.
I think you found it the other, a few years ago, didn't you?
With no label on it.
No sticker. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how I ever come across that copy of Pokemon Gold, but I did, and I've still got it. But I'd love to like plug that into an old Game Boy and play that again. That'd be so many memories for me just in one bang. You know. But yeah, I think like the one thing to take away while we're sort of wrapping this up, I think the one thing to take away from the Game Boy is that like especially nowadays when we think about Pokemon, Pokemon was so much it's big for every Nintendo handheld, but God, it skyrocketed. It helped skyrocket the Game Boy to like whole sorts of heights. Pokemon. Like just the ability to interact with your friends with the link trading and link battling and all that stuff, and
even with Fire Red Leaf Green, they included a thing called the Game Boy Advance wireless adapter, which I'm showing you now.
Oh, I mean, yeah,
and that was amazing, being able to just like
do it wirelessly.
Yeah, wirelessly.
Yeah.
And it's something so simple now. Everything has wireless. Everything has Bluetooth.
And I think you got it for no extra cost.
No, it was free.
With that too.
Yeah.
Like that's fucking incredible.
Yeah, and
wow.
like Heart Gold Soul Silver on the DS did a similar thing with the Poker Walker.
Yeah,
which is really
it's
cool.
just free. And I mean, like that was Pokemon always had those little gimmicks, sort of like in tow somewhere.
Yeah,
even as far back as again the Game Boy printer, and like every time a Pokemon game out, like there was no blank spots in the Game Boy's life where Pokemon was just bleh. Like every single game on the Game Boy that premiered on the Game Boy was just a brilliant game.
Well, I guess there wasn't that much. Like the Game Boy Advance, it only lasted from 2001 to 2004. Like there wasn't that much of a time the Game Boy was relevant because Nintendo, their sort of attitude was, oh, this thing is going to, well, the DS is going to be the third pillar. It's not going to take over the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's literally got a Game Boy Advance slot on it, so I think it
will, guys. Yeah.
I think it will. Yeah. So that's why it sort of died so early, which was a shame because if this thing kept going for like another 2 years,
it could have had a like absolutely stellar library. I mean, it already still does, but like
yeah, it still does, but
even more so.
Yeah. Actually, before we go, Bryce, look at this thing. Look at this.
Oh, the e-reader.
So the e-reader. That was the thing. That's a weird little thing. And that also,
we all bought it.
You get one too, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Adam got one too.
We all bought it.
Yeah, because it was on. I got it for.
We wanted it for like the exclusive berries and shit, and then
yeah,
in Pokemon, and then it just sort of ended up as it was.
And I've got like all the cards here, which is scanned.
Oh, you lucky bastard! I got rid of all of mine.
See, I don't get rid of all my stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, you're a handheld collector, I suppose. Let's take a look at some of these, Drew, before we end it all.
Yeah.
So what have we got here? You've got a huge deck here. You could basically play Yu-Gi-Oh with this, right? You've got an instruction. You've got a couple of.
Give us the instruction book while you look through the cards.
Okay.
See what's in here.
So you've
This
got
is interesting.
a whole bunch of battle cards. Now these things.
See, they were cool. So in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, you could scan these cards into your game, and there was a house in Mozdeep City where you could go, and you could verse trainers from all over the world. And depending on what card you scan, that's who you go and battle. So you didn't gain experience from these battles. It was basically just to do the battles just for fun, really. There wasn't any particular reason.
Yep.
But I remember in Ruby and Sapphire, you didn't have access to games that were, or not games, but Pokemon from the original games until Fire Red Leaf Green come out.
Yeah.
So just versing trainers that say had a Tyranitar or had a Charizard or something like that was just really big back then as a kid. I think that's something we take for granted now because all the Pokemon games, all the Pokemon are pretty accessible for most people.
That's it.
But back then they weren't, and it made even like Charizard feel rare.
Absolutely did. Keep talking for a minute.
you just you got some berry ones there, very nice.
Yeah, just keep talking for a second. I'm just having a look.
Yeah, so I'm gonna plug. It was really weird because like with the Game Boy Advance SP, I'll plug my e-reader into it, and it wasn't really made for the Game Boy Advance SP. It was made for the original Game Boy Advance. So when you plug it in, and you've actually got this little guard you've got to put up so it doesn't scratch your select button. But yeah. What else we got here? God, I haven't looked at this in ages. This is really cool to have, actually. This is instruction.
Little instruction booklet. So here you have 37 out of 48 trainer cards.
No, do I?
37 out of 48 of them. So you've got most of them here. And like the thing is like some of these trainer cards and stuff, they have shiny Pokemon in their parties and stuff.
Yeah, and that was like huge as well.
That was big as well.
It was cool just seeing. It was just basically cool to sightsee the Pokemon.
Yeah, that's it. You've also got a couple of berry cards here. You've got the Drashberry card, the Nut Pea Berry card, and the Pumpkinberry card. Obviously, all for Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. Sorry, I dropped the card. And then here's like the cornerstone of the e-reader was
so
games.
This was really weird.
So you could play Donkey Kong Jr. if you scanned 5 cards, and like I had this as well.
That's how I played Donkey Kong Jr.
That's exactly
how I played it.
My name is Donkey Kong.
Oh no.
And like it was so weird. Just you've got another berry card here, the Strudberry.
What a nice berry.
But but that was one of the bigger ones. Donkey Kong Jr. was one of the bigger ones. It was huge for whatever reason. Like it was.
And that you've also got the hockey.
I've got 2 here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Manhole. So the original Game & Watch Manhole and hockey. I loved this one.
I love that game.
I loved hockey card. The hockey card.
Let's do a let's play. E-reader hockey. Yeah, no, that was really fun.
I loved hockey. Yeah, it was so good. I don't know why, but
fun games.
I loved it.
You got to like scan it every time.
Yeah.
Then you're playing the game with this freaking e-reader just like hanging from your Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
And if anyone doesn't know what we're actually on about, I'll just have a look. Just Google e-reader Game Boy Advance. It's just like it's pretty much as big as the Game Boy Advance SP or the almost the size of the normal Game Boy Advance as well.
Yeah, it absolutely was. Yeah, it was such a giant thing. I don't know what they were thinking at the time, but you got the guard in here.
See, I'm looking on the back here, Bryce. It lists the companies that are involved. It says Nintendo, Creatures Inc. So that's what handles the Pokemon for the Pokemon series, and HAL Laboratory. And so they're the 3 Nintendo companies involved in this piece of hardware. So that's interesting. Maybe Pokemon was actually involved in getting this piece of hardware out.
I dare say it's probably just the cards.
Yeah, it could be, but it's actually got it on the hardware itself, though.
Yeah, but I mean
that's interesting. Yeah,
maybe the software side of it, but I highly doubt the hardware side of it.
No, well, that's what Nintendo's there for. They'll be doing the hardware.
It'd be pretty much solely for the software stuff, and it would be so that like it could help the like the actual thing read the code for Pokemon.
Yeah.
I say HAL Laboratories probably made the smaller games and ports.
Yeah.
And then
That's just interesting. I just literally noticed it then. I'm like,
Yeah, no, that was the last.
Creatures is on there.
That was the last bit of huge tech that sort of come out of it. I mean, it was kind of useless tech, but
yeah, because I got it when they were pretty much getting rid of it.
Yeah,
because that was like $90 Australian, which $90 when you're a kid in a game's the same price.
The thing is, though, is they could have done a shit ton with it. Like they could have like had DLC sort of stuff for Pokemon. Like you could go and get like, oh look, you can get. I don't know.
Well, the Pokemon cards actually had e-reader functionality back then.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what they did.
But like Eon Ticket and stuff. Like imagine that. Like back in the day.
There was.
Yeah, but we didn't have them here.
I didn't have them. No. But there were Eon Ticket cards and things like that you could scan into your game.
Yeah.
And if I had one, oh god, I would kill for one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I just wanted the sound. Oh my god.
Beautiful.
Oh, that ding at the end.
There's that ting, yeah.
Oh,
gets you every time. It did in my old GBA as well.
Oh, just this too. Oh, Pokemon. Oh, can't turn it off with one hand. There we go.
All right.
I
think that pretty much covers the Game Boy.
Yeah, I still have a lot more I could say, but I don't want to go on too long. But
look,
we're doing a Nintendo podcast. We have the opportunity to come back and talk about it if we want to.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I mean, like I blurted enough about the SP. I'm pretty sure on the Switch Lite talk we had. So, because that is like that was a really ending on a high note. That console was a fantastic revision of its original, and it's just the Game Boy Advance really killed it. And then obviously we got into the DS, and the DS took over its place. And I miss the name Game Boy.
I do too.
Yeah.
It is. Would you see that brand coming back, or do you think in 2000?
Yeah, no,
do you think in 2019 the idea of just having like the idea of a Game Boy where gaming's open to everyone and it's not just the boys with their toys?
No, I just love the Game Boy and like the name itself, but it's never coming back.
It's never coming back.
It's dead. It's dead in the ground. I think they've moved on from that, and there's no way they're going back to those conventions. If they ever released a classic, then it'd be like, whoa, but no, it won't happen. I would love to see like just, how cool it would be if they released a mini version. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But they only had 3 things for it. They make make an original Game Boy Advance.
Oh.
With a backlit screen, rechargeable battery, and a cartridge slot that allowed you to slot in Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, like collection cartridges. Looks like 20-in-1 Game Boy, 20-in-1 Game Boy Color, 20-in-1 Game Boy Advance.
Yes, please.
Imagine that. And then you could also chuck in your old Game Boy Advance games and stuff in there if you wanted to. Could you imagine that? That'd be beautiful. But alas, Drew, it probably won't happen. So I'm not going to get your hopes up anymore.
No, you just made me very.
It would solve everyone's problems with one stone.
You
don't have to do 3 mini versions of the consoles. You just have to release cartridges with.
Yeah, I guess the thing is though, like you might not have fond memories of the Game Boy Advance. It might be the original Game Boy, so it might not suit that person, or vice versa. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I guess so. But I think the problem is that the screen ratio is the issue. You can't, if you make 3 separate fucking minis, which they're not going to do, they're not going to do it. Then you have to account for everyone. But like, if the demand is enough, and they're like, okay, we'll put out one that plays 3 iterations worth, then it sort of makes a bit more sense, right?
Actually, one thing also, what I really miss about these cartridges too is just how nice they are.
Yeah, they're nice
cartridges. Like the colored, like the Pokemon ones, like they're see-through. Ruby and Sapphire look really nice, but with like the DS games, they went just grey. But Heart Gold, Soul Silver, they all like nice black ones. But apart from that, they were just the same ones. And like the Switch ones now, they're boring as hell.
They are.
Yeah.
Oh well, can't win them all.
No.
Rest in peace, good cartridges.
Oh, I missed the Game Boy. Awesome. That was a fun podcast to do, bros.
That was.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah. Alright, everybody, thank you very much for listening to the House of Mario episode 110. If you enjoy the show, please feel free to subscribe and leave a review on your podcast player of choice. If you'd like to follow us on social media, I am at iDrooby, Bryce is at IVRevan, and the show is at the House of Mario. And if you'd like to further support the House of Mario and my other podcast, A Drew Story, please consider checking out patreon.com/iDrooby. For just $1 a month, you can get access to Bryce and I's exclusive variety podcast, Crackin' Furfies, where for the month of August, we talked about the postal service and our experience working in the hospitality industry. Other tiers include discounts for the House of Mario shirts, jumpers, and mugs from our TeePublic store, an exclusive behind-the-scenes podcast, early access, and the ability to be a part of the House of Mario skit, which could be a lot of fun. So once again, that's patreon.com/iDrooby. And of course, we are a part of the 8-Bit Collective. 20 plus podcasters and 12 podcasts coming together to put awesome audio content in your ears. If you'd like to check out more from the collective, check out We Are 8-Bit on your social media platform of choice. And Nintendo JUKEBOX this week is Game Boy, which is quite fitting since we talked a lot about the Game Boy. And it's by Silentroom. It's an awesome sort of composition put together. So hope you enjoy. And until next week, have a good one.